This is our Canterbury Insights Forum, and it is a collaboration between the Chamber and ChristchurchNZ. It's an initiative that Ali and I talked about 6 months or so ago. We were both doing our own thing, and we thought actually this doesn't make a lot of sense for us to be doing that individually, so it's a great example of us working collectively together to bring some insights to you, our business audience. So it's great to see so many representing all corners of the business community in this room here today. It's also great to see both our Mayor, Phil Major, and our Deputy Mayor, Pauline Cotton, with us today. Thank you for being with us this morning. We've also got a couple of board members from the Chamber here as well. Today's forum explores just how our economy, our workforce and our community are really doing. We'll present our findings from the research of each organisation, and then we'll deep dive into some of the trends and some of the key themes and issues with an opportunity for your input during some Q&A with a panel session. Ali Adams, the Chief Executive of ChristchurchNZ, will present their findings from their latest Economic Insights report, and I will then present the Chamber's insights from our latest quarterly business survey to share how businesses are feeling and also about the expectations for the future. This will be followed by a panel discussion and your chance to ask some questions. So on our panel today, we have Shayne Moore, who's the Chief Executive of Mint Design, another great partner of the Chamber. Shayne will provide a Christchurch business perspective, and Linda Falwasser, the Chief Executive of Tāwhaki joint venture, to discuss opportunities to build business confidence and collectively cope with uncertainty and drive a positive business culture in Ōtautahi Christchurch. I'm really looking forward to hearing their views and sharing their stories. So just before I continue, I just want to acknowledge a couple of people. A huge thank you to our event partner, ANZCO Foods. We've got Joel and Joe, or known internally as J and J apparently. I can't even see them anymore, but they're here. So thanks for their great support. They are great supporters of the Chamber, and they continue to make events like this possible. Also thank you again to ChristchurchNZ for contributing to this event today as well, with their ongoing support. I'd also like to acknowledge the Chamber's principal partner, Westpac, and our major partners, Orion and Enable, who continue to support our organisation. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The bathrooms are in the foyer where you entered, and in the unlikely event of emergency, fraudulent slip, please follow the instructions of the Chamber team. The evacuation area is just right behind us in the car park. If you haven't already done so, if you can turn your phones to silent, please, that would be great. This session is recorded by the one and only Chris Lynch, sitting in the front here. And the slides along with the recording will be sent to all of you in your follow-up communication. I'd now like to welcome Ali Adams, the Chief Executive of ChristchurchNZ, to present her insights. I think if I do that, thank you very much. Up to you.
Thank you, and we'll try and write that up on that whiteboard as well, so you can actually see. So, because if you're anything like me, I have to see things rather than hear things. So then hopefully you can ask lots of really curly questions. So that would be really helpful. All right, so kia ora te marino, kia whakapapa punamu te moana, hui e taiki e. Kia ora koutou, thanks so much for having me here today. As Leeann said, I'm Ali Adams, I'm the Chief Executive at ChristchurchNZ, which is the city's Sustainable Economic Development Agency. And the karakia I just opened with is really appropriate, I think, for what Leeann has just talked about, which is really collaboration and working together. It's about may peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone and bind us all together. And I am really excited that we're starting to do more work collaboratively. The aim is to try and make it much easier for you, our customers, to navigate the ecosystem here in Christchurch and get the information that you need in a way that is simple and maximises the use of your very valuable time. So I'm going to run very quickly through some of our regional economic insights. Huge thank you to Sophie Jones and Nick Bryan and the team at ChristchurchNZ who pull these together. We produce these insights monthly, and we also do a deeper dive into quarterly data, and that's all available on the ChristchurchNZ website. So do go on. There's a lot of information on there that you can lay your hands on quite quickly. So at our last Insights Forum, we talked about record levels of labour force participation and the tightness of the labour market. And this is not going to be news to many of you. But since then, we have actually seen that labour market tightness persisted for longer here in Christchurch and Canterbury than it did actually nationally. New Zealand's unemployment rate started to rise back in June, while in Canterbury it fell to a 7-year low of 2.8%. And it indicates that it's much harder in Canterbury for you employers to catch up with vacancies that couldn't be filled while the borders were shut. Now, freshly released labour market figures for the September quarter show that, in line with our expectations, that gap between our local and national labour markets has started to close, and unemployment has now increased in Canterbury and is in line with the national average. No, it's okay. I dread to think what's going on there. I hate to think what she's writing on there. She's got the power of the pen. I'll get it back later when I'm moderating the panel. So, second thing I want to talk a little bit about is some other indicators of labour demand. So last year we saw really strong demand for labour in Canterbury, particularly in manufacturing, health and the primary sector, and we have actually seen a cooling in hiring intentions since then. So online job ads in Canterbury have fallen about 21% from the record highs seen this time last year, but they're still around 20% higher than pre-COVID levels. And that's compared to an 11% fall from pre-COVID levels in Auckland and 5% growth in Wellington. So we are still a very buoyant market, but it is definitely starting to drop off a little bit. And the number of applications, my husband would endorse this, per job ad has increased significantly. That's not only because there are fewer jobs to apply for, but also because there's been a big lift in the number of applications coming from overseas, particularly for entry-level and service jobs. So growth in the size of the labour pool and increased competition for jobs is expected to ease our wage inflation pressures fairly quickly from the end of this year, and improve access to skilled staff for employers. Moving on to sentiment and spending. You won't be surprised by this either. I don't think a lot of this is stuff that we all feel every day. But a key theme in our economic data, and it's also very much reflected in the survey insights that Leeann will talk about later, is that there is a great deal of uncertainty being felt right now. We've heard that businesses are concerned about consumer confidence. It's true that just like last time we spoke to you, confidence does remain very low, and it's weighed down very heavily by household concerns about personal finances. But we have seen a little bit of a lift in consumer confidence in Canterbury over the last 6 months, whilst national confidence has continued to fall. So again, this is another place where Canterbury is showing some more resilience and buoyancy than the rest of the country, which is great. And sentiment amongst locals about the Canterbury economy specifically is less negative than confidence about national economic conditions, which is really encouraging. The impact of financial pressure and consumer uncertainty has started to show up in local retail spending data. So Canterbury consumers appear to be tightening their belts across discretionary or non-essential spend categories. So average transactions values have dropped across clothing, footwear and jewellery, home and garden retail, and recreation and leisure. So that kind of means that while people are still choosing to go out and spend, they're cutting back on how much they purchase each time, and they're trying to reduce the impact of inflation on their budgets. Now, the impact of this is being partially offset by ongoing recovery in international tourism, with international visitors injecting almost $400 million into Canterbury's brick and mortar retail sector in the last year. And with the cruise season kicking off again today, our first cruise ship is due in at 10 a.m. this morning. And there's almost 100 ships expected this year, and some are approaching. Those benefits will be continuing. So you really notice on the days when cruise ships are in town, there's a real vibrancy. The impact of the recovery in the tourism sector on the headline economic activity speaks to the strength that's found in the diversity of our economy. So our economic structure here in Canterbury means that activity is generated across a diverse range of sectors, and that positions us to be more resilient in the face of these challenging economic uncertain times. The strength of our agriculture and manufacturing sectors was a real linchpin when our services sector was under extreme pressure during COVID. And more recently, weak economic performance in China has dragged dairy prices downward, and that has created ongoing challenges for our exporters. It does mean that our performance in our agricultural sector has been weaker than we expected when we last spoke to you. But at the same time, the reopening of our services sector has boosted economic activity and helping to support momentum. Perhaps that's happened slightly faster than we thought. Canterbury's economy is the most diverse of the three major regions, and that's, again, really helped us to continue to outperform the national economy across a number of indicators, including growth in GDP and employment. And along with GDP and employment growth, our region's population has also been expanding. You may have seen an article over the weekend that talked about Christchurch being one of the top 10 cities in the world that people wanted to move to, and the only New Zealand city on there. We were really excited to see that. Had nothing to do with us. We were just, well, that's not true. I hope it's got something to do with the work we do. But the article had nothing to do with us. And I think we see and feel that every day. So migration inflows have been really strong since the borders opened, and record numbers of people are relocating to New Zealand from overseas. Over 15,000 people have moved to Canterbury in the last year from overseas, and that's an average of almost 1,300 a month. And attracting people from overseas is to live and work in our region is really essential, not only for tackling the short-term labour and skills shortages that developed in the post-COVID period, but it's also key for addressing some of the longer-term gaps in our workforce as our population ages. And of course, it also brings great vibrancy and diversity to our city. But Canterbury isn't just benefiting from international migration. Our region has also been attracting people from within New Zealand. The Great Southern Migration is a real thing. Canterbury has experienced the strongest regional gain from domestic migration for the second year in a row, and an estimated 3,000 people relocated to Canterbury in the year June 2023. So it's almost entirely driven by people moving out of Auckland. And there was a smaller net outflow from Wellington. Now, our strong economy and lower cost of housing are definite drivers of this migration, and these recent numbers confirm what I expect we've all been hearing anecdotally. But I'm going to talk a bit later in the panel that one of my very sad things about getting older is that I spend my life thinking that the Radio New Zealand presenters are my friends. I listen to them all day. And a prominent local mortgage broker on RNZ the other day said that 1 in 5 residential mortgages are to Aucklanders moving here. And that in the previous 6 months, his company had done as many mortgages for people moving from Auckland to Christchurch as it had in the previous 4 years. Cost of living. But we all know the cost of living is having a huge impact right now. But whilst it may not always feel like it again, Canterbury remains the most affordable major region. Our house prices and average weekly rent are 14% lower than national average, and it's also more affordable to do business here. Commercial rent in the CBD is around 40% lower in Christchurch than it is in Auckland or Wellington. But look, it's not just affordability that is drawing people here as part of this great migration. We have a fantastic new city, and a huge shout out to the Christchurch City Council, who have really invested in some incredible infrastructure here in Christchurch that is making us feel like the place to be. There is no doubt that this is our time to shine. We are the newest, coolest, most interesting city in New Zealand. And we really are a city where you can find balance, you can have that great career, and you can have a wonderful lifestyle. We have shorter commutes. We have better access to nature and more vibrancy in our city. And you only have to talk to people about Wellington and Auckland's downtown woes to appreciate what we have. So people who live in Christchurch score higher than those who live in the other major cities across a range of lifestyle indicators. And Cantabrians work slightly fewer hours per week than the national average, which supports those higher rates of satisfaction with work-life balance. The affordability and lifestyle benefits offered by our region are also drawing in young people from across the country. While university enrolments at Auckland, Wellington and Otago universities all fell in 2023, enrolments of the University of Canterbury have hit record highs for the last 2 years. And the halls of residence at UC and Lincoln are both filled to capacity. I won't talk about the front page of the press today, which I just heard on the way in. Yeah. Our tertiaries provide excellent pipelines of talent for our economy, and keeping those young people here in our city is really key after they graduate. So look, I just really want to acknowledge what an amazing place we have here. Our perceptions research shows that our potential future workers, our residents and our visitors, they all see what we see. They all see the opportunity here. 42% of New Zealanders say they're open to moving to Christchurch, and 28% of Australians are open to visiting Christchurch within the next 5 years. That's a big number. And the top consideration for migration from both Australia and from within New Zealand is jobs. So it's about job opportunities. 33% of Kiwis would move to Christchurch for better job opportunities. So we need to seize this moment and to celebrate it. We need you. We need our SMEs to create those amazing jobs that will help attract and keep people here. So the best thing you can do is to support this moment and tell everyone how great our city is. One of the insights from the research that we were done to develop the new city identity, which you'll see some people wearing today, was that we as Cantabrians, like many New Zealanders, but probably amplified the further south you go, tend to hide our light under a bushel. We don't understand or don't want to share how good we have it here. This is a great place to live. It is a great place to run a business. It's a great place to visit. And it's a great place to come and advance your career. So we just need to tell people that. Thank you in advance for being great ambassadors for our city, and thanks for listening. I'm going to hand over to Leeann and Namiki Nui.
Thank you very much, Ellie. It's a great way to start the morning, and it does certainly just sometimes every now and then we need to be reminded of just how special this place actually is. Notwithstanding some of the challenges that we have in terms of doing business. The other thing, if you don't already access the ChristchurchNZ website, there's some amazing information and insights and data. Make sure you actually go and use that information, because it is truly a great resource. Right. So as I mentioned before, at the Chamber, each quarter we run our quarterly business survey. If you're not involved, if you don't participate, please reach out, reply to the email that you get after this, and we'll make sure that you do get involved. With well over 300 responses to that survey, it does inform two things. One is our advocacy, so it really gives us a good feel for the challenges and the opportunities and the very real issues that you as businesses face. And the other thing it does is it informs our work program. So Genevieve in the back there takes all those insights and goes, what does this mean in terms of the resources, the training, the events, and the actual support that we provide you to help navigate some of those changes. It does also dig deeper into understanding some of those challenges that you are facing, and helps us make sure that when we are talking to both local and central government, we can actually articulate how they are playing out those issues for you in terms of business. So before I jump into the latest survey, I just want to summarise a couple of key themes that we've seen over the last 6 months. Economic uncertainty, the labour market, and what it means to do business in Canterbury are the standouts, and Ellie's talked about all of those. In this latest quarter, we've seen a decline in business and consumer confidence, with rising uncertainty about cost pressures having a flow-on effect across our regional economy. Yet businesses are individually optimistic about their own business performance, which is great to see. We know that the environment in which businesses operate, which also influences their decision making. So it's an interesting challenge, and one that we'll certainly hear more about during our panel discussion as to how we might be able to collectively lean into our own optimism and confidence in terms of our individual business performance and start changing the narrative around the city and the region. As a city and a region, we continue to identify as resilient to things thrown our way, and I know that word does get overplayed a little bit, but certainly some of the information that Ellie's just presented really does reinforce that. We do remain uncertain about what the future holds, and that plays out in terms of how we invest, what we invest in, and how we embrace changes and how we take risks. So the first theme is uncertainty and the economic environment. Oops. Not very good at clicking these things through. As I mentioned before, one of the overarching themes from our data over the last 6 months has been about that declining business confidence. This has been reflected in core metrics like expectations of the strength of our economy, investment intentions, and also hiring intentions. At the moment, just under half of those businesses surveyed expect the economy to be either the same or stronger over the next 12 months. This is down 61% in the May quarter, so a little bit more of a slip there in terms of that confidence. Investment intentions are also down 25% to 51%, and a figure that generally sits around 60 to 70. So that's just how that plays out. There's quite a big drop. And of course, staff hiring intentions, which I'll dig into a little bit more shortly, has also dropped slightly back to 61%. We think the decline in business confidence indicators is being driven primarily by two things. Firstly, costs. The cost of doing business has risen sharply over the last 3 or 4 years, but has generally also coincided, certainly of late, prior to that, with increased demand for sales. However, that has now changed, and businesses are trying to minimise costs and manage profitability And with some of those higher costs that you've all incurred over the last few years, now really baked into your operating. And of course, consumer confidence and demand is now starting to fall. 96% of businesses are experiencing moderate or significant impacts from rising costs. The industries who have said that they're most affected include manufacturing, accommodation, hospitality and retail, although interesting to note that hospitality and retail are seen as an essential service, which is great. We need to get out and make sure that we do a little bit of enjoyment in life as well. 74% of businesses expect costs to keep rising over the next 12 months. And with the biggest concerns in our most recent survey, including inflationary pressure and, of course, rising interest rates and rising compliance costs. So when we asked what is driving those costs, businesses told us that the majority was being driven by wage growth, which again I will dig into a bit more shortly, followed by inflation for 31% of businesses, and then interest rates for 8% and compliance costs for 5%. In true Canterbury style, however, another core business confidence metric are expectations of businesses' own financial performance. While it has dropped slightly in our last survey, it does remain very strong, with 44% expecting performance and 27% expecting to hold steady over the next 12 months. The other factor we believe contributed to uncertainty in the last survey, of course, was the impending election. We're almost there with those results, but there's still a little bit of uncertainty, clearly. Now, I'll just preface that because the data was collected for this last survey that I'm talking about before the election, and alongside data which told us that 74% of businesses at that time thought that the government was doing a poor job of managing the economy, and 86% thought that New Zealand was heading in the wrong direction. It's pretty staggering. So I suspect that's why we saw some change. We are expecting to see business confidence rise in our next survey, reflecting both the election results and just that little bit of added certainty. And regardless of how people voted, the outcomes at least does provide some certainty as to where we're heading in the future. Major banks are still expecting inflation to start to fall going into next year, so hold on there on that one. But 18% of Canterbury businesses are still seeing significant impacts from our labour market constraints. Really interesting. We ran a session a couple of weeks ago with an industry group, and there was a lot of conversation around labour market, and one business was talking about having to make some pretty tough decisions, easing of demand, extra costs that they were facing, so they were having to make some tough decisions to let some staff go. And then on the other side of the room, same industry said, "Can you let me know because I need some more staff?" And so it is playing out differently for different people. And that's despite the growing unemployment rate that Ali talked about earlier. And of course some changes to our immigration settings, which have been very welcome, but they're still far from perfect. We've got a long way to go. So nearly a quarter of all businesses tell us that they've seen improvement in the labour market over the last 12 months, which is encouraging. And that's up 13% from the quarter before and 4% from February this year. So there is light forming at the end of the sort of 3 to 4 year tunnel where that's been a constant challenge for all of you. The flow-on effect for the prolonged pressure on the labour market is wage growth. As I mentioned before, employers have had to pay more to compete to access staff over the last couple of years. Wage growth is now the single biggest cost pressure for 42% of businesses we recently surveyed, so outdoing inflationary pressure and rising interest rates. So that's quite a significant challenge. This does perhaps form some of that uncertainty that we're also seeing about hiring intentions. People are just a little reluctant when they're facing such huge cost increase. What we also know from conversations on the ground with our members is that the reluctance to advertise or hire for more staff, while driven by some uncertainty about the economic environment and wage growth, there is still a huge need out there for both skilled and experienced staff, and that's certainly been one of the key things that we've been advocating for around immigration, is that experience, particularly for some of the specialist roles. On a brighter note, Ali talked to her presentation. Canterbury is a very attractive place to live, to work and to play, and we're seeing hordes of people come here, not only from New Zealand but overseas as well. And I was talking to Joel earlier about this. One of the things that we've got to be really careful of is, how often do people say, there's not the same sort of career opportunities in Christchurch or Canterbury. It's a story that we're telling ourselves. And sometimes I think we want to keep, the city the best kept secret because we love the quality of life and we don't want to become an Auckland. Sorry for the Aucklanders in the room. But actually we do need more people here as well. Right. Over time, that growing population base will ease some of that pressure on labour markets and wage growth as well. I got it right, yes. The third and final theme is cannery strength and attractiveness, and again, Ali touched on this. It gets overstated, but it's true. Cannery businesses are very resilient. We've faced a huge amount of adversity, which has been really challenging for you, but it has meant that we're able to flex and respond and adapt as those changes play out. In the recent survey, 14% of cannery businesses told us that they were very confident about their ability to deal with disruption, and 52% were moderately confident. So that's pretty positive. 71% of businesses are still expecting their own financial performance to be the same or stronger over the next year. And 50% tell us that cannery is heading in the right direction, despite only 11% continuing to think the same about the direction of New Zealand. So it'll be interesting to see those changes in the next survey. I do want to point out, however, that this is not downplaying the very real reality for all of you in the room about just how difficult it is to do business right now. We fully appreciate that it has been probably the most challenging last few years that you've probably ever experienced. But I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you've told us are going well. Freight routes and the relative ease of moving people and products around is seen as something pretty positive. And we generally do this better than the main centres. We've seen the return of some great international flights. That gives us ability to bring tourists in, to get freight out. That's been really positive. And we're continuing to look to grow and expand. The return of tourism, including the cruise ships. I did actually provide a very positive comment for the press on that article, but I did see it didn't actually end up in the article this morning, unfortunately, because I think the cruise ships provide a huge opportunity for us in this city and this region. It's a shame that we continue to report the negative sides of things in the press. So, Ali talked about the $400 million. It's a pretty big number. And that has a positive impact not only on the city and the region, but the flow-on impacts from those as well. From my perspective, it also includes our strong industrial diversity, including some of the more traditional sectors, the backbone of our sectors like manufacturing, agriculture and construction, alongside our thriving small and medium sized business community. That has been critical in getting Canterbury and New Zealand through these challenging economic times, and often people don't realise, but 97% of our businesses in New Zealand are small businesses. And actually in this city and in this region, we are overrepresented with small business. So that's why I spend a lot of time trying to advocate and represent the interests for small business. Finally, I think that's probably all the stuff that I've just talked about. Okay, next slide. One of the jobs here at the Chamber is to make sure that businesses, just like we hear a lot about the impact of the cost of living on households or employees or individuals, but businesses are also supported to continue to move through, navigate the change, be supported along the way, work through uncertainty. If we can do that, I'm really confident that we'll come out the other side. We'll continue to be a strong economy. We've already seen the green shoots of that, and we'll continue to do that. So thank you for all of the work that you do in this room to contribute to our local economy, for the people that you employ, and for choosing to do business here in this region. Thank you. I'll hand back to Ali.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask Leeann to grab a seat, and Leeann's going to join our panel today. And I'd like to also invite our other panellists up. So we've got Linda Falwasser, Chief Executive of Tāwhaki Joint Venture, and Shayne Moore, Chief Executive at Mint Design. And I'm actually, I think probably you probably don't need to introduce yourself again. Do you want to? Would you like to? So,
Leeann Watson.
but maybe Linda, if you want to grab the mic and just tell everyone a little bit about who you are and a little bit about Tāwhaki, perhaps.
So kia ora koutou na mihi nui kia koutou, ko Linda Falwasser taku ingoa. So I'm the CEO of Tāwhaki Joint Venture. I whakapapa to the north, Waikato Tānui and Ngāti Awa on both coasts, but for a couple of decades now, I'm proud to call Ōtautahi home away from home. Was an Aucklander, so great comments this morning. Tēnā koe to our Mayor, to our Deputy Mayor and councillors, and to you all. So a quick bit of context. Tāwhaki is a joint venture between the Crown, not the government of the day, the Crown, and Mana Whenua for Kaitoriti. It's the first of its kind in terms of a joint venture partnership. We've purchased 1,000 hectares of land within the Christchurch takiwā out at Banks Peninsula on Kaitoriti, and we're developing our country's first spaceport. 2 years ago, we've established the National Aerospace Centre, and you may have heard just a few weeks ago that we received significant funding to put in a sealed runway and start sort of carving the way to horizontal space launch. So come mid-January, Mia, you will be opening up that runway, and Christchurch will be taking flight in our country's first horizontal space launch. So among many things, we weave together mātauranga Māori, aerospace, innovation, and have a real strong focus on rejuvenating environment. But most of all, whilst I talk about our footprint and our infrastructure being on Kaitoriti, we have a remit to drive economic opportunities for our region, for our country. So I'm actually here to serve you all and really think about how we enable your businesses and the spillover benefits that we can create through aerospace and how that impacts you in a positive way.
Thanks, Linda. Shayne.
Great. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here today, and thanks for all the organisers for inviting me and all the hard work that's gone into it. A bit about me. So I'm a family man with a 5-year-old daughter and a wife, Alice, who's been here many times. Been with her 21 years in Canterbury. Professionally, I founded Mid Design. It's a digital marketing agency that started 13 years ago during the Canterbury quakes and expanded to Auckland 2 years ago. And I've just recently been involved in influencer marketing with the Salt. But yeah, what a beautiful part of the country we live in. So just on the weekend, I took my daughter out tramping for her first tramp ever. Which was amazing. And when we got back, she said, can we climb Mount Cook together one day? Which is, so yeah, I wish we could harness more of that childlike thinking within businesses in our community. And what I've been thinking about recently is, how do we give, my daughter and the other children the tools to sort of get through the uncertainty coming with us. So, they'll be the ones that are living through climate change issues and also the advancing tech that's a bit scary to us all now, but they'll be living through it. So, yeah, the main thing is I'm certainly not excited about climate change issues, but AI and the advancing technologies and how we embrace it. So I've been thinking and doing a lot in the business with that. So, yeah.
Well, that's quite a nice segue because what Shayne's done there is started to kind of get into the question I was going to ask the panel. So as I mentioned earlier, I love Radio New Zealand, and one of the things I periodically hear if I'm driving around from meetings in the afternoon is the I've Been Thinking session on the panel. So I thought I was going to get the panel to do lots of work today. And Shayne's already talked a little bit about what's been on his mind. What's been on your mind, Leeann? What have you been thinking about at the moment?
Damn, I was really hoping Shayne was going to sort of go into that and I could steal some of his answers. What's been on my mind? So I touched a little bit on this in my presentation. Right now, the biggest issues that we are hearing and seeing across the business community is uncertainty. And while there is a huge amount of uncertainty that we cannot control or do too much about, what we can do is we can certainly try and provide good, strong advocacy to the new government around reducing inflationary costs, reducing the cost of doing business, making sure that they've got much more certainty around regulatory settings, and just creating a more even playing field as we move forward. So those are certainly things on my mind in terms of what we'll be doing to engage with the new government. Pretty much from now. We've already had some engagement. Internally here at the Chamber, most of you will probably know, we've just launched a whole new business model, new membership categories and framework, new website, new CRM went in last week. We're transforming the organisation, so it is a super exciting time. It's also a pretty challenging time. The team have been amazing. They've embraced the change, but they're incredibly busy. So making sure that we support the team and support the members on the changes as we move forward. And hopefully you'll see a new brand before the year end is out as well. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about, other than the fact that I didn't have any breakfast and I'm really hungry.
Good honesty, thank you. Linda, how about you?
I'm thinking about AP40 and cut and fill and making sure my runway's going good with the construction. But no, seriously, I think, whilst we all have our individual focuses on our businesses, and it's so good to hear how people are feeling about that, but I think to truly turn the clock with Christchurch, our world-class city, it's going to take an ecosystem approach. It's going to take real partnerships in the way in which we work together. And, if you just take what we're doing with aerospace, well, it's not just about the companies that are taking flight. It's about the advanced manufacturing. It's about the hydrogen. It's about the energy. It's about the world-class universities. It's about our international seaport, airport. But none of us as CEs in our roles or in business can do that by ourselves. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this, more of coming together and thinking about how we solve some of those challenges.
That's awesome, thank you. There's some really key themes coming through here: uncertainty, collaboration, advocacy. So more optimism in Canterbury than the rest of the country, but a lot of challenges. Shayne, was there anything you wanted to add to your I've been thinking? Or?
I guess just the building resilience within teams, and kind of just how do we bring more Canterbury, head offices into Canterbury, because I think that's what's going to drive the change into getting the teams here and the people here. I think if we can encourage those, initiatives like this one here, more of these, we're gonna get better people, better, economy is going to keep growing, and like the stats say, it's the positivity in Canterbury is good. So if we keep that going, we're going to keep going well. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Don't forget, by the way, if you've got a question, please do submit it on the app. If you would rather ask the question in person, that's also fine. Just stick your hand up and we'll find a way of making it work. So I thought I might maybe I'll kick off with you, given that you've got the mic, Shayne. So I've got to try and pass that. It's like a hot potato. I might stick a little bit around uncertainty, but how might we get better at recognising uncertainty and risk, and having the courage to identify our own vulnerabilities so we can address them? You can't address what you don't know about. How do you think we might get better at that as individuals and as businesses? Feel free to pass it on if you would rather. Linda looks excited. Linda asked me to make sure all the really gnarly questions went to her.
I don't know, as business leaders, you've reflected on this yourself, but all knowledge is power, right? So from a young age, we're taught being perfectionist is a good thing. Do this well, oh, that's great. Do this well, that's great. But actually, you have to reflect and look at things. You have to lift the lid of the bonnet of the car. As leaders, it's the only way to learn, and it's the only way to then kind of jump forward and take a risk, because you know what the consequences could be. So, I'm probably telling you to suck eggs, but I don't know. We can get to a place sometimes where good and great feels like the only way to succeed, but you kind of got to take a few hits, and I know I've taken them in my time, and I now do things differently. So take the hits, lift the lid, do some risks.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to add to that, Shayne or Leeann?
Yeah, I think I guess what we do at Mint is do a lot of surveys and kind of find out from the team what's happening, because I think as leaders we're always going to have blind spots, and trying to find out what those blind spots are and then work towards them and just communicate that with the team. So we do a team meeting every month, and one of the things we're going to be doing is just talking about why we're doing those surveys and trying to encourage them to get participation up, and then we can find out what those, concerns are within our team, and then we can start addressing them with them.
So for me, I think, picking up on Linda's point, there's a couple of, things that I think about regularly. So the first one is, if you do not push yourself and take risks, then generally you go backwards. particularly at times of uncertainty. And that's really hard. It does take courage to actually try and do things differently, but surrounding yourself with great people that you can engage with, friends, family. Ellie and I spend a lot of time consuming liquid to share different conversations. But having people that you trust and that you can have good, honest conversations is really, really important. There's a couple of quotes, and I'm terrible at remembering these quotes, but there's one about that Ayrton Senna used, and it goes something along the lines of anyone can pass someone on a dry racetrack. But it takes real courage to pass someone on a wet racetrack, and that's where you get your strategic advantage. And so that's having the courage when times are uncertain to actually go out there and do something differently and take risks. And of course, you need to take calculated risks, and you need to understand what those risks are. But actually, the alternative is to either go backwards or stand still. And I think we do need to recognise that. The way in which we operate as leaders, the way in which we operate our businesses has significantly changed. And so we have to be able to look at what may have served us well in the past will not serve us well in the future. So we have to try different approaches. And we also need to expect that we're not always going to get it right. And having the right environment to actually take risks, to make mistakes and not be, blamed or criticised for something that hasn't gone perfect. There's another little, it's not a quote, but it's something that Petra, our GM here at the Chamber, shared something just a wee while ago. If you think about making pancakes, your first pancake's always pretty shitty, right? And it's the one that you either throw out or you quickly eat before you give show the other ones to the family. But you don't get the third perfect pancake until you've done the first two. And so I think that's a really good way of looking at it, that you do need to try things in order to, in practice, and keep trying, and it's not always going to be perfect, and we need to be comfortable with that. We need to be comfortable with ambiguity, and that's not what we were taught. So it's a mindset shift.
I love that. That's fantastic. Thank you. This is actually slightly linked. It's a question from the audience, but how do businesses manage some of that uncertainty around regulations and whilst balancing their obligations in reducing carbon emissions?
You go, Shayne.
You're in a light touch business, but I'm sure you still deal with this, and I'm sure there are plenty of your customers who are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis.
We have got a lot of customers that are dealing with those issues and the increasing cost of that compliance. I think you just have to keep educating yourself, and we've got great providers at the Canterbury University and things like that, and also the Chamber doing a lot of talks around supporting us. But Leeann mentioned before about talking to each other, and once you've worked something out, share it around the community, because I think that's going to be the quickest way and the cheapest way to get through those things rather than trying to do it on your own.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, isn't it, that the Kiwis very much like to reinvent everything. I was at a conference last week up in Hamilton, and a lady was talking about how our building costs are almost double or triple those in Australia, because every window is a different size and everything. There's nothing bespoke or modular about it. It's that number 8 wire mentality, and I think we've got to get comfortable with stealing with pride. Yeah.
Well, we're dealing with sectors that are steeped in compliance and the activities that we're doing, but I think we've taken an approach where we step back from that, and actually we're Indigenous-led. We don't apologise for that. We're tūturu, which means we're true to that, and our decision-making frameworks are maybe slightly different, where we focus on what our values are, what our core principles are, and our vision. And you can get stuck on compliance and how that feels, or you can go back and kind of go, well, does it align with our vision? Does it align with our values and who we are? If so, then it's the right move to make. If not, advocate, influence, and do something about it. So,
yeah, great. This one is for you as well, Linda. You might want to hang on to the mic, sorry, but it's not business related, but a lot of people are really interested to know what you're doing to preserve the katipo habitat. From the impact of the infrastructure that's being built. I think, it is a really fascinating project, and you are leading the way in this space. So,
Yeah, well, if many of you have been out to Kaitoriti, it's 25 kilometres of beautiful landscape. It's like you're in a whole different wilderness. So 25 kilometres long, it's a big place. And at its sort of the widest point, it's 3 kilometres wide. So the katipo spider, native spider, it lives along the sand dunes which flank the ocean and flanks a lot of our property. Right now, we've got a big job ahead of us because there are recreational people that like to drive four-wheel drives, like to drive motorbikes, and they are driving all over those sand dunes that are flanked with a beautiful sand sedge. It's called the pingao. So it's as vibrant as some of the jerseys in front of me. It's used as a taonga species for weaving, and those four-wheel drives and those motorbikes are ripping it up. That pingao is the habitat, the home, the living space of the katipo spider. So our 1,000 hectares that we have and the 100 hectares that is your national aerospace centre does not have any of the katipo spider. In our area, we have ecologists, we have environmental experts walking that land every day, and so hand on heart I can tell you we've done our homework, we know where those species are. We need to do more about the people that are not really acknowledging the importance and history of some of those areas and feel good about ripping it up every day and having a bit of fun.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Leeann, in our last Insights Forum, with Carl Davison from Research First, we talked about a high percentage of individuals in business facing loneliness within and outside the workplace. Kind of strange, we're in the most connected and yet the most lonely time of humanity. And obviously the impacts of feeling isolated can have really big impacts around pessimism for the future, both on your mental and physical health. So with 23% of your businesses saying they're concerned about mental health and fatigue, how can we better support one another?
I think it goes back to what we talked about in the earlier question around how do we bring people together to share their common challenges and experiences, to share the solutions, to make sure that they feel supported in an environment that is full of uncertainty. So here at the Chamber, we do try and do that as much as what we can. We've talked a lot about, we have some online forums, but actually the overwhelming response from our members and some of the work that we've been engaging with them to help inform our new business model has been, we want the face-to-face, we want the personal connections, and I think that's why. So the thing that worries me the most is that I see a lot of great support available for employees, and we have leaders in the city who deeply care about their employees, and they have a lot of great support available for them. Where I think there's an overwhelming gap is where's the support for the leaders, because actually being a leader at times can be quite lonely and quite isolating, and there's sort of a bit of an expectation that leaders have all the answers, particularly when it's times of uncertainty. But actually, if we go back to COVID, I mean, there was no playbook to lead through a global pandemic. We simply didn't have one. And yet, most people look to their leaders to help inform, well, what are we going to do? How's it going to impact us? What does it mean for our organisation? What does it mean for us as individuals? So I think we need to do a better job of supporting our leaders. We need to make sure that we are not constantly slamming our leaders when they don't get it right, and particularly through the front page of newspapers. We need to actually go, well, actually, maybe they didn't quite get it all right, but look at the great things that they are doing. So I just think we need to, I hate to use the words, we need to be kinder. But we do need to support each other a bit more, and we do need to provide opportunities for our leaders to get together to share experiences.
I'm sure we'll get a hear from the front row. Shayne?
Yeah, I catch up with Cal Davis quite often on the regular, and it was quite sad stats to hear about the loneliness and how people are living alone a lot more, but they're not alone at work, and I think that's where we can really thrive in trying to just ask people how they're doing, but the default answer is going to be about work, and even if we're talking to leaders, it's going to be, how work's going, but I guess just stopping and going, no, how are you doing, and just finding out if someone's stressed. One thing that I do is just, if I identify that someone's stressed, just walk around the team and ask them to keep an eye on. So just be open about it and talk more about it, because it is hard, and there's a lot that we can all do as leaders, but just asking the question, I think it starts from there. So.
Yeah, great. Linda, anything you wanted to add? No. All right, great, thank you. So let's come on to something a little bit about, we've talked about collaboration as a city, and we've kind of picked up a little bit, and I think hearing quite strongly that we need to collaborate more. Feedback in your recent survey indicated that there is still an ongoing lack of cohesion across our city in how we work together. And with significant migration flows into the city, we are actually, and the region, we're starting to see a change in our people. We're getting much more diverse. We've got challenges around equity and inclusivity. How can we better embrace some of those changes and leverage the opportunities that come from that? So maybe, Linda, you're in an extremely diverse and I would say pretty groundbreaking part of what the city's doing. How are you embracing diversity?
I think when people look at our country and the New Zealand brand, they love it, and it's extremely attractive in terms of the many cultures that make up Aotearoa. So I think it's, from our perspective, it's taking that opportunity to look at diversity within your business, not as a concession or a have to do. It's a strength and a positive about weaving together the different fabrics and people within your organisation. So I'd flip it on its lid and kind of look at how does the world see us, and what are the positives about that, and how can we incorporate that into our business?
Yeah, I always find diversity interesting because the values, just aligning your values doesn't have to be diverse, and then you can bring in all the other cultural aspects, and the talent from overseas is going to bring new ideas, new innovation, and it's just trying to align your values together and then bring them part of the team. We've got a lot of team members that are from overseas, and I think it's just strengthened us. So I haven't seen it personally, but it's great to I guess just align them to your values and keep talking about that, because we all have a lot of those values the same.
Probably one thing I would add is that often people who don't necessarily understand either different cultures or the different diversity sort of lenses can come from a place of just not understanding, so therefore they don't appreciate how to have the right conversations, how to provide the right environment to actually get diverse thoughts. And so I think we need to do more about just understanding what diversity actually means, because diversity means different things to different people. And when we're talking about ethnic diversity and how we actually understand that in a workplace, and we're probably guilty of it here at the Chamber. I mean, we've seen a significant amount of diversity in our team over the last couple of years, and just because they all speak English does not mean that they don't have different cultural beliefs and understandings and ways in which they might engage. So what are we doing around actually really understanding how to get the best out of people? And so I think there is a role to play in terms of just really increasing the understanding of what that actually means. And making sure that we understand the lived realities of our people, because often on the outside, you might think something about a particular person, and I think picking up on your point, Shayne, around actually really asking, how are you, and really trying to dig, and that's hard because some people don't necessarily want to share. But in terms of breaking down some of those equity things, I think it is actually understanding lived realities for people.
Great, thank you. And there's one here that's getting lots of votes. I'm trying to avoid it because it's partly in ChristchurchNZ one. Steve, who asked this, I'll come and chat to you afterwards about what we're doing in this space. But how are ChristchurchNZ and the Chamber improving the focus in Canterbury on reducing local business climate impact? Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing at the Chamber, Leeann?
Yeah, sure. So we've just received our Toitū accreditation at the Chamber, which has been too slow, but I'm really pleased that we've now finally gone down that route. So we're leading by example in that regard. But over the last few years, we've tried to do as much as what we can to, again, help educate people on the role in reducing emissions, understanding the opportunities. And I think one of the things that we really want to try and do moving forward is to reposition the way that we think about sustainability and reducing emissions, and not seeing it as a compliance, but seeing it as a massive opportunity, because it actually is. But how do we actually help particularly small businesses get on the journey, understand what it means, understand where to start. And we've got a series coming up very soon. Genevieve's shaking her head. When does it start? Start of next year. So for us, it's about trying to bring people on a journey, get them to see it as an opportunity as opposed to a piece of compliance. And I think if we all play our part, we have a massive opportunity in this city and in this region to lead the way in that regard.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Did you want to add anything else? Or no? Let's move a little bit on to storytelling, something that I talked about a little bit, that we're not that great at telling our good stories. So to overcome some of the misconceptions around Ōtautahi, Christchurch and Waitaha, Canterbury, and to support some of those questions we've had around vulnerabilities and not feeling the need to be perfect, how can we support businesses to share stories, whether they're good or bad? So any ideas on good platforms and good ways that we can get comfortable sharing our stories?
Yeah, look, I think just coming up with a good strategy first of what you do want to talk about, because I think we rush in and start using social media and things like that just to regurgitate whatever we've got on our mind. But if you've got a good strategy and pillars of content that we want to put out there, but I think we've got some great initiatives with the Chamber and ChristchurchNZ, and just being part of those groups, I think allows us to share and be around great business leaders like we've got here today. So just being, I guess, making the time to join these events and be out there and encourage others that aren't here today to come in and be part of it as well. So.
Linda, you're a champion storyteller.
I would just add to that, don't hold back. And I've probably been guilty of that with our own business. We stayed quiet for a while and we really didn't talk about it until we were doing. But now Christchurch needs to punch above its weight. It needs to tell the biggest stories and loud and proud. Give your businesses a place to shine. It's like the unkept secret down here, and I just think we need to be a bit more prouder. We become a bit too humble, and you can be humble, but you can do it gracefully too and shout from the rooftops. So I just think we need to go for it.
That's great. Thanks, Leeann.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. There are lots of opportunities to tell your story, and every single one of you in this room, we are keen to tell your story. So send us a note, tell us what you're doing, and we will share it through our channels. One of the things that we'll be launching early next year, am I allowed to say this, Hannah?
Started now.
Podcast? Yeah. I always get told off for telling the audience things, and someone says, "We weren't supposed to say that," so, which is probably why they keep me in the dark about quite a lot. But we are launching a new podcast series next year, and that will be all about telling the story of Canterbury business. And the reason we're doing this, and we've also got, I think, another sort of a little news series that we're doing. The reason we're doing it is because we need to change the perception of how people think about Christchurch and Canterbury. Ali and I are going to Wellington in a couple of weeks' time to meet with some of the government agencies up there, because they simply don't understand the opportunities that we have here. We want them to see us as a city and as a region that is really strong, that has huge opportunity, where we can pilot and trial new initiatives. And that comes with actually telling your story. So please don't be humble. Please shout it from the rooftops. Please tell us so we can pass those stories on. Because what we're doing in this city and in this region is really exciting, and we need people to know about it.
Here. And I would just add to that, please let us know, particularly around anything to do with regenerative, circular sustainability. We have just launched a city economic ambition, which is not a ChristchurchNZ thing. It's a city strategy for the whole city, which is around making Christchurch a more regenerative economy. You can find it online. And as part of that, we need to tell stories about the great things that are already happening. So if you're already doing great things in that space, just flick us an email and we will amplify it for you, because a lot of this is just about all speaking with the same voice.
And can I just add one more thing?
Yeah, please.
I do a regular interview with this chap called Chris Lynch. He has 900,000 followers. So actually, if you want to tell your story, reach out to Chris Lynch. He has an amazing audience, and he's always after good juicy stuff, aren't you, Chris?
That's awesome. Thank you. Look, one of the things, again, we've talked a lot about the fact that you mentioned earlier that a lot of our businesses are feeling pretty optimistic about their own individual performance, but they're balancing this challenge with some kind of pessimism around the broader economy. How can we make sure that we invest the two most valuable things we have, which are our business capital and our human capital, in a way that can really generate the best bang for our buck or for our time? Shayne?
I guess it's going to depend on different industries. There's going to be less money flowing into certain industries coming up, but we can always invest in our people, and that doesn't cost a lot of money. It costs our time, and I think that's where, we can just keep, I guess, get the whole team involved and make sure that they're on board with it and communicate why we're doing it and make them part of the decision-making process, because I think it's, if you go top down too often, you end up with no buy-in. So just encourage the team. Like I said before, we do surveys, make sure that you're asking the opinion of the team and make sure everyone's voice gets heard, because you get a room full of people and it's the loud ones that put their opinion forward, but it's the quiet ones that you kind of want to find out the answers from. So.
I think post-quake we did a lot of how do we just get out of this, and then we did a lot of dreaming, and there became a lot of post-its, and then we kind of fatigued through that period and let's just do business. We're now at a point where we can totally lead ways in which our city can be activated in the future, and I'll give you an example of that. So if you take advanced aviation, so autonomous craft, that could be Ubers that you dial, we get people off the roads because there'll be too many cars, and Ubers and autonomous vehicles come to you at the top of a building and that'll take you to Rangiora. Now people are probably sitting here going, that is not going to happen in my lifetime. It is. That is going to happen. And if not yours, your grandchild's, your children's, it's going to happen. So how does Christchurch embrace the future of transport? And I guess where I'm going, Ellie, is we need to be proactive and more forward thinking. And we need to push regulation, we need to push legislation, and actually we can create some of that right here in Christchurch. So we're working with regulators right now to start doing trial routes of this autonomous vehicles and get them closer to the city and start to work on systems, procedures of integrating airspace in a different way that we may not have seen before. Now, no one's done that in the world. No one's done that in New Zealand. Why can't Christchurch be the first city? That's just one idea. So how many things like that could we change the dial and lead here? I'm looking at you, Mr. Mayor. I think we have an opportunity. If we only get one life, how do we do some change? And how do we start, putting up here on the boards, what are those big game-changing things that our city could be responsible for providing a platform for the world to follow? So I guess that's more of a challenge.
Well, I love that though, because I think what I'm hearing there is that circles of influence and control. It's spending your human resource and your money on areas that you can influence. So, and I really love that, because I think, we actually have more influence than we think we have.
And I mentioned that in a way, it's about how do we retain the companies we have? If we think about what their forecasted projections are going to be and they need certain things unlocked, we're going to have to think about that.
Yeah.
If we're attracting companies to Christchurch, international companies, how do we ensure that their journey is unlocked so that they stay?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's great, thanks.
I'll add a couple of things to that, Ellie. One of the pieces of work that we're doing right at the moment with the Business New Zealand network, which we're part of, is a report on, what is the country that we all choose to live and do business in? What does that look like for us in the next 50 years? And what is the role that we as business people play in helping to shape that? Because if we've got two choices, we can sit back and we can wait for that environment to be shaped by the government, or we can actually go, what's the role that we play? And what are some of the trade-offs that we're prepared to actually make in terms of actually shaping up some of exactly what Linda's just talked about? So let's be aspirational. Let's try and shape the future that we want rather than sit back and wait for it to be shaped for us. And there's a massive amount that we as individuals can actually do and influence. And yes, of course there is a role for government to play in terms of pulling the right levers, getting out of the way in some cases, and making sure that they keep up. Because we've all heard of some of these situations where, technology has leapfrogged ahead, and our regulations don't allow us to actually do that. So that's the role that the Chamber can play in terms of advocacy, but it starts with us actually dreaming big and having the right aspirations.
Look, that feels like a really beautiful place to wrap up. So I'm gonna call it there. Thank you very much to our panel. Can we just give them all a round of applause? And look, I also just want to say a huge thank you to you for coming. I know the breakfast is a great draw card. It was good. But we also know that you're really busy and that your time is valuable. And so we'd love your feedbacks on today so that we can actually make sure that we are making the most of your time, which is your most precious commodity. So let us know what works, what doesn't, so that the next time we do one of these, we can make it even more valuable. Huge thank you again to the Chamber for being such a wonderful partner. Thank you very much to the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor and the Councillors for turning up. And thank you again to our event partner, ANZCO. Have a wonderful day. We will make sure that we get the presentations to you in a separate email, and hope you win the office sweepstake.